The maid, Maria, came into the billionaire's mansion as a quiet presence. She was hired to keep the estate clean, follow strict schedules, and stay out of the family's way. Edward Kane, the billionaire who owned the mansion, was known for his rigid rules and emotional distance, especially after the tragic car accident that had paralyzed his 10-year-old daughter. Lila Maria wasn't told much about Lila, only that she was to be left alone and that her wing of the mansion needed to be cleaned without disturbing her. Still, Maria couldn't ignore the eerie stillness of that part of the house. It was as if joy itself had been exiled. Maria had grown up in a poor neighborhood where happiness had to be made from scratch. Her favorite thing had always been music. As a child, she and her sisters used to dance in the kitchen while their mother cooked. That memory of dancing free, expressive, alive stayed with her even in the quiet, sterile halls of the mansion. When no one was watching, Maria would hum while she cleaned. Sometimes she'd tap her foot or twirl with a mop in hand, moving instinctively to melodies that lived only in her head. She never imagined anyone noticed. But Lila noticed. The little girl, confined to her wheelchair, often sat by the window or watched old dance performances on her tablet. Though her body had limits, her spirit still longed for rhythm. When she first saw Maria dancing while wiping windows one afternoon, she didn't say a word. She simply watched. Day after day, Maria's cleaning routines became Lila's silent shows. It wasn't long before Lila began following Maria with her eyes, and eventually, with her chair. One afternoon, as Maria cleaned the ballroom, she played a soft jazz tune from her phone. She moved gracefully, sweeping and stepping with flair. As she turned toward the doorway, she froze. Lila was there, peeking in from her chair. Maria smiled nervously, unsure if she had crossed a line, but Lila surprised her by rolling into the room and saying just one word. Again. Maria hesitated. She wasn't sure if the cameras were on, or if she'd get fired for interacting with the billionaire's daughter, but there was something in Lila's face, something aching, desperate for connection, that melted her fear. Maria replayed the song and danced again, this time slower, exaggerated, with the grace of a performer. On stage, Lila clapped, and then she asked something unexpected. "Can I try?" Maria didn't know what try meant for a child who couldn't walk, but she nodded. Carefully, she approached Lila, gently took her hands, and helped her move her arms to the beat. Then she started guiding the wheelchair in slow circles. They laughed, Maria out of joy, Lila out of rediscovery. In those moments, Maria wasn't just a maid, and Lila wasn't just a disabled child. They were dancers, partners in a world without judgment. Over the following days, it became their secret. Maria would wait until the afternoon when most of the staff were on break or busy elsewhere. She would play music softly and begin cleaning near Lila's wing, knowing the little girl would come find her. They started experimenting with movements. Lila would sway her shoulders or lift her arms, and Maria would mirror her. Together, they created their own rhythm, a private choreography born from patience and trust. Maria began researching movements online, simple dance therapy techniques for children with physical limitations. Without formal training, she adapted what she learned, focusing on breathing, stretching, and expression through the upper body. She used scarves to help Lila feel the motion in the air and incorporated rolling spins with her wheelchair. Lila was transforming. Her speech grew livelier, her posture improved, and even her therapists noticed a renewed sense of motivation in her. Maria never boasted about what she was doing. She didn't record their sessions or seek praise. For her, it was enough to see Lila smile, to hear her laugh echo through rooms that had been silent for too long. The mansion itself seemed to change, less cold, less distant. The staff noticed that Lila was more curious, more talkative. But no one knew the real reason why. Edward Kane remained largely absent during this time, busy with his corporations and business deals. He checked in on his daughter through staff reports and security footage, but hadn't sat with her in weeks. He believed no one could understand Lila's needs better than the experts he hired. He was wrong, but it would take witnessing it with his own eyes to see it. The transformation wasn't just physical or emotional, it was something deeper. Lila had begun to reclaim agency over her body and her joy. For so long, she had been treated like a fragile, broken thing. Doctors focused on her limitations, not her desires. Maria never once saw her that way. She didn't pity Lila, she challenged her, she encouraged her. She listened. The joy they created together wasn't loud or grand. It was quiet and rebellious. It was born in the stolen minutes between chores, in the hush of empty halls, in the gliding turns of a wheelchair that once only sat still. It was in the rhythm of trust, the unspoken language between a maid who remembered what it was to be forgotten and a child who had been sidelined by fate. Maria didn't mean to change anything. She wasn't trying to make headlines or prove anyone wrong. She just followed the music. And in doing so, she helped a lonely child find her own beat again. Edward Kane had built a fortune from nothing. He controlled international shipping lanes, oil rigs, and high-rise empires. Yet he could not control what mattered most: his daughter's health. After the accident that left Leela paralyzed from the waist down, he had poured millions into doctors, therapists, and private specialists. Every corner of his mansion was modified to accommodate her, and every expert promised breakthroughs. But none of them could give her back the spark she had lost. In truth, Edward didn't know how to talk to her anymore. Their conversations had shrunk to brief nods, clinical check-ins, and shared silences. Behind closed doors, he grieved not just her injury, but the loss of the girl she used to be. He had no idea that, while he focused on controlling the external world, a quiet transformation was unfolding inside his own home, one that had nothing to do with wheelchairs or expensive treatment plans. It began with a maid. Maria, hired with little notice and even less expectation, had been helping Leela rediscover joy not through science, but through movement, laughter, and something Edward had long since discarded: presence. He learned about it by accident. One afternoon, Edward returned from a cancelled board meeting. As usual, he entered through the east wing, avoiding Leela's space, more out of discomfort than cruelty. But music caught his ear. It wasn't loud, but it was clear and melodic, something soft and upbeat, curious and slightly irritating. Music wasn't part of the household's strict routine. He followed the sound down the long marble corridor that led to the grand ballroom. What he saw stopped him cold. Maria was spinning gently with Leela, who was in her wheelchair. Her arms were lifted like a dancer's. Maria moved around her with elegance, guiding her chair in wide arcs that looked nothing like the clinical mobility exercises the therapists had shown. Lila's head was tilted back in laughter, her hands moving through the air like she was flying. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, no self-pity. Edward had not seen his daughter that alive in years. His first reaction was anger. He assumed boundaries had been crossed. No staff member was allowed to engage Leela in unsupervised physical activity. That was a rule, not a suggestion. His voice was ready to erupt, his hand halfway to calling security. But then, Maria leaned down, whispered something into Lila's ear, and the little girl grinned so wide her entire face seemed to glow. Edward's chest tightened. He stepped back into the shadows. Unseen, watching for several minutes as the two of them continued to dance. His mind raced. He didn't know how long this had been going on. He didn't know if Leela's therapists had noticed any of it. What he did know without question was that this moment was healing her more than anything he had paid for. Later, that evening, Edward called Maria to his study. She entered nervously, unsure of what he had seen or whether she was about to be fired. He didn't start with questions. Instead, he asked, "How long has this been happening?" Maria told the truth. She explained everything: how it began with simple music while cleaning, how Lila had asked to join, how their dances became a kind of therapy neither of them had intended. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't sugarcoat it. She just told him what dancing had done for Leela's spirit. Edward was silent for a long time. Finally, he asked her to bring the music and show him. The next afternoon, Maria stood in the ballroom again, this time with Edward sitting in a corner armchair, watching. Lila was nervous at first, unsure why her father was there. But Maria kept things normal. The music played. She twirled. Lila followed. Within minutes, they were laughing again, moving with fluidity and joy. Edward wept. He had forgotten what it felt like to see Leela free, expressive, engaged in something not assigned by a therapist or framed by recovery goals. She wasn't trying to overcome anything. She was simply being. For the first time, he saw not a disabled daughter in need of fixing, but a child full of life, reclaiming her own way of being in the world. And it had taken a maid, not a doctor, not a specialist, to show him. The next morning, Edward held a press conference not to fire Maria, but to publicly thank her. He called her a healer in disguise and revealed how she had reawakened a joy in his daughter no amount of money could buy. The story exploded. News stations picked it up. Headlines ran with phrases like "Dancing Maid Heals Billionaire's Daughter" and "The Moment That Moved a Million Hearts." Maria didn't want the attention. She had never intended to be part of a public spectacle. But the video Edward released showing a short clip of Leela spinning in her wheelchair while Maria clapped and danced beside her went viral. Millions watched. Parents with disabled children wrote to Edward and Maria alike. Some were in tears. Others were inspired to start dance programs in their own communities. The story took on a life of its own. Edward, moved by the global response, used his resources to launch a nationwide initiative called Steps of Hope, a program funding movement, therapy, dance, instruction, and creative arts for children with physical disabilities. Maria was offered a lead advisory role. She accepted, but only on the condition that she could still work with Leela in the afternoons, in the mansion, just like before. Edward's worldview had been shaken. He realized that his daughter's healing would never come only from surgeries or routines, but from connection, joy, and freedom, the very things Maria had brought back into her life. For once, he allowed himself to let go of control and simply listen to the rhythm his daughter danced to. Asterisk,